Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for our Freshwater Stewardship Community webinar. We're very excited to have Claire Ross here with us from the BC Water and Waste Association. She's going to be our keynote speaker for the next hour or so. My name is Monica Seidel. I'm the Communications and Fundraising Manager at Watersheds Canada. And we are hosting this webinar, and we have been hosting the freshwater stewardship community now for 3 years, having different expert speakers from different stakeholder groups and across Canada. So we're very excited to have Claire here joining us from British Columbia. And for those of you who might not be familiar with Watersheds Canada, we are a national nonprofit and charitable organization. We're headquartered in Eastern Ontario over by Ottawa. And we deliver a number of on-the-ground restoration programs that focus on protecting the health of Canada's lakes, rivers, and shorelines. So a couple of our different programs are pictured on the screen here. We do Love Your Lake Shoreline Assessments, which is the photo in the top left, which is a program delivered in partnership with the Canadian Wildlife Federation. And we're working in a boat and going across a water body, assessing each of the properties on that water body and giving them a bit of a personalized property report to let them know about the health of their property and how the actions they're taking on land might impact the health of their water. And so they can use these individualized property reports to take positive actions for their lake. And this program is delivered locally across the country in a couple of different provinces, thanks to different regional delivery groups that we work with. We also deliver our Natural Edge program in a number of provinces, which you can see in the top right. And this is a shoreline planting program. It works with shoreline property owners, municipalities for public park areas, as well as agricultural property owners to naturalize their buffers or their shoreline areas with native species of trees, shrubs, and wildflowers, so that it can protect the health of the shoreline itself from things like erosion or overland runoff, but it can also provide critical shoreline habitat and also beautify the property overall. In the bottom left, we have a photo from our nature discovery programming. So this is our backpack lending library in the photo. And we work with public libraries, schools, and other community groups like lake associations to have these backpacks full of science equipment and activities for families to check out and borrow so that they can explore nearby nature and get connected with local species and different stewardship programs that they can lead in their own community. And then in our bottom right, we have our fish habitat restoration program. So you can see a Lake Association member about to push off a brush bundle. So this is tying together a whole bunch of branches and sticks and restoring underwater woody debris, which is really important habitat for a number of different species, including native fish species. So they can have a place to have shelter from the sun or protection from predators. And these areas are also used by other species like turtles and macroinvertebrates. So if you are curious about any of these programs that I've just mentioned or some of our other programs, I encourage you to visit our website, which is watersheds.ca. And you can access a number of free resources related to shoreline protection and also see if maybe you or your community group is able to participate in one of these programs. Something that we'd like to draw attention to, for those of you who may not be familiar, Watersheds Canada has a symbolic adoption program where you purchase a symbolic adoption and you get a customized artwork postcard featuring the species that you symbolically adopt. This is a really great option for those people who are tricky to buy for, or people who just really love nature and different wildlife species. And so these adoptions receive a full tax receipt and are really a great option ahead of the holidays or birthdays, or just because they're very beautiful pieces of artwork. All of the art is done by different Canadian artists, and you can learn about all the different adoptions at watersheds.ca/gifts. And finally, something that many of you may be familiar with is Giving Tuesday, which is coming up in just a few weeks. And Watersheds Canada, as I mentioned at the beginning, is a national nonprofit and charity. We work with a number of groups across Canada, and the only way that we are able to do this important restoration work with property owners, community groups, and schools is because of generous support from individuals like yourselves on this call. So we have a really amazing opportunity this Giving Tuesday, thanks to Maitland Tower, which is another nonprofit in Eastern Ontario, and they are matching all new monthly donors. So your impact will be doubled for freshwater protection. And so if you are interested in learning more about that or becoming a monthly donor, the amount is not important. All of it is going to make a tremendous impact for freshwater areas across Canada. So if you're able to donate $5 a month or $10 a month, it is all going to go directly back into this on-the-ground grassroots programming. And so you can make a tax receivable donation at watersheds.ca/donate. The program that we're all here for today is the Freshwater Stewardship Community. So this program has now been running for 3 years. It was brought about because of the pandemic and having to transition our programming online. And it has actually been a really wonderful way for us to connect with groups across the country and also have resources that people can access on demand. So people have maybe not heard of the community before and didn't know that there was a 3-year-old library of resources they can access. So there are 39 webinars so far in the freshwater stewardship community, and almost all of these have accompanying handouts that summarize the topic that was explored in the webinar, but then also action steps that you can take as an individual or a group to address that specific topic. So all of that is available for free on our website. So the link that you would have gone to register for this webinar is the same one. So you just scroll down a bit and there are different categories of topics that you can click through and learn all about different topics on how to protect freshwater in your area. And we would like to take a moment to thank the different foundations that have made the freshwater stewardship community possible in 2023, particularly the ECHO Foundation, the SM Blair Family Foundation, and the Peterborough KM Hunter Charitable Foundation. Everyone who registered for today's workshop will receive a handout. This is the one from the last webinar that we did, which was about brook trout and climate change. And so we will be sending that to everyone who registered, along with a recording from today's session early next week. So you can look forward to getting that in your inbox. And both the handout and the recording are free to share as far and wide as you would like them to go. If you think someone could benefit from it, we really encourage you to share these resources so that more people have the tools that they need to take action for their fresh water. And we have a couple more webinars coming up this month and into the beginning of December. So all of these webinars are focused on climate change and the different impacts that waterfront communities are facing, and also how we can take action as both individuals and communities at large. So if you are interested in registering for any of these webinars, you can do so at watersheds.ca/freshwater-stewardship. So now we will transition into today's talk, which is creating community. And I'd like to introduce our speaker. Claire Ross works at the BC Water and Waste Association as the Community Engagement Specialist for Small Water Systems. Claire maintains the BC Small Water Systems Community Network platform while also working to support other projects of the organization. Claire has an educational background in public health and gerontology, as well as public policy and global affairs. Her expertise lies in project management and community engagement. Welcome, Claire.
Thank you so much for the introduction, Monica. I will just share my slides and we can get going. Great. I have been experiencing a little bit of connectivity issues, so if I get choppy at any point, please just let me know and then I can stop sharing my video and continue on. But hello, everyone. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on what time zone you're joining from. My name is Claire Ross, and I'm a Community Engagement Specialist for Small Water Systems at the BC Water and Waste Association. And today, As Monica mentioned, I will be talking about creating community and some of the lessons that we've learned through the BC Small Water Systems Community Network. And before jumping into the presentation, I would just like to acknowledge that the webinar today is hosted virtually, but I'm joining from the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. And as we discuss small water systems and community building, I would just like to express my gratitude to the Indigenous communities that have stewarded the land and waters since time immemorial. And they're truly the reason that we're able to have conversations such as these today, due to the generations of care that have preceded us. So for a bit of a roadmap to today's talk, first I will go through a little bit of background and context on the Community Network project. Then I'll do a little bit of a walkthrough of the platform itself, talk about some of the community building lessons that I've learned over the past few years, and then we'll leave some space for questions at the end. And so for those of you that don't know, the BC Water and Waste Association is a not-for-profit organization that represents over 4,000 professionals in the water industry in BC and the Yukon. And we've been doing this for well over 50 years. There's a variety of different project areas, which include industry engagement, professional development, which includes our annual conference that will be in Whistler in April 2024. We also host a variety of other specialty conferences and technical and operator training courses and education. We do the cross-connection control certification for the province. We also have a variety of communities and committees of practice, as well as a career center. And so taking a bit of a step back, looking at the BC Small Water Systems Community Network, this is just one project area of the BC Water and Waste Association, but the Community Network itself is a free online platform that brings together the small water systems community of owners, operators, partners, supporters, volunteers, and service providers from across British Columbia. And so when we think of small water systems in BC, the definition that we go by is a system that has more than 2 connections serving up to 500 people in a 24-hour period. So this is an extremely diverse community. We know that there is a variety of different systems, be that residential, recreational, commercial, industrial, or mixed use. Some residents are full-time, some are part-time, and some are living there just seasonally. There's also a wide range of governance structures. Some systems are private, some are water user societies, some First Nations, and some public. And then in terms of water treatment, there are some small systems that have no treatment at all, and some with very, very complex processes. And so we know, just based on the diverse range of systems across the province, that oftentimes there is a lack of capacity just due to the smaller nature, limitations in funding, potential limitations in time, due to the general volunteer makeup of these small systems, and potentially a lack of experience for those folks who may have never worked on a water system before. And so across the province, there is over 4,000 small systems. Okay, so for a little bit of context now into the project itself. So how did we get here? Well, in 2015, the BC Water and Waste Association began a partnership with the province of British Columbia with the ultimate goal to improve the resilience and sustainability of small water systems in the province, really focusing on the decision makers. And so in 2015, what that looked like was really just hosting in-person workshops called Taking Care of Your Small Water System. And the workshops were hosted in a variety of different areas across the province. And there was also a little bit of talk about point of entry and point of use as a potential mechanism or framework for small systems going forward. Moving forward a little bit, in 2019, there was an Auditor General's report which highlighted concerns with small water systems. And two of the main pieces that were highlighted in this report were the large number of boil water advisories, as well as concerns with long-term financial and infrastructure sustainability. And so as a result of the past work that we had done in 2015, as well as this report coming out, we were asked by the province again to provide a scaled solution for the small water systems decision makers, to kind of continue developing the peer networks, as well as curating resources for these individuals, and then continuing to provide some of the education that we had previously done. And so that's where we get into kind of what the makeup of small water systems and community projects look like at the BC Water and Waste Association today. So the BC Small Water Systems Community Network was created. We continued to host Taking Care of Your Small Water Systems workshops, but instead of in person, we transitioned them to a virtual format, as well as adding an additional advanced workshop on financial sustainability and management, and a self-paced virtual primer course, which we've called Apparently I Have a Small Water System, Now What? And based on providing all these additional education opportunities and some of the decisions by the Ministry of Health, it was decided that point of entry and point of use wasn't really a framework that we were going to look at going forward. So once we kind of reframed what small water systems and community building projects look like at the BC Water and Waste Association, there was a little bit of kind of goal development. So these projects really focus around the two main goals. The first being that all small water systems owners, trustees, and their teams in BC have access to the knowledge, training, tools, and resources they require to make informed decisions about the long-term management and sustainability of their system. And then the second piece is that all stakeholders within the small water systems community can work collaboratively to share resources, expertise, and experience. So when doing any type of community building project, especially one with the scale of a whole province, you really want to think about who is involved and the different stakeholders at play. So the image that you can see on the screen here is a little bit of a stakeholder map that we've created, with the water users being really central to the project itself. So you'll find them in blue in the middle. Expanding from there, you'll see small water systems owners, volunteers, and employees. So those are anyone actually working with or working on a team to kind of provide support for the small water system they're running. Beyond that, we talk about small water system supporters. And supporters are kind of external folks that are involved in the small water system community, but might not necessarily work or run a small water system themselves. So you can think of them as other organizations, manufacturers and suppliers, consultants that provide services, training providers, contractors, and groups like that. And then beyond our supporters, we have government bodies, health authorities, the folks that are providing laws, policies, regulations, and guidelines that are kind of dictating how small water systems run. So throughout the presentation, you'll hear me refer to small water systems owners a lot, as well as small water system supporters. So you can kind of think back to the stakeholder map to get a greater picture of the groups that I'm referring to. And so another central component, especially to community work, is talking to the folks who are involved. So before the community network was even created, we did have a lot of conversations with folks who are involved in the small water systems community. So lots of online surveys, phone surveys, focus groups to both supporters and owners to really try to grasp a true understanding of what was already out there, what are the needs of these communities, and how can we help them going forward. And so we did learn a lot from these initial conversations. We found that 75% of the respondents that we had talked to have less than 50 connections to their system. So these are very, very small water systems that we're working with. 58% only had one operator for their system. And sometimes the operator was a certified operator, and sometimes they were not. They were just a volunteer of the system who had a little bit of knowledge and might have volunteered and put their hand up to help run the system. We also found that small water systems owners often don't know who their peers were. They weren't aware of the resources around them or how to access them. And then we found that owners really saw the importance of the supporters, but they also, when thinking about building a community or engaging in a community, they didn't want to be seen as just, a marketing list or having regulators kind of looking over their shoulder into the conversations that they were having with their peers. And we also found through these conversations that there was a varying level of trust between the owners and regulatory bodies like the Ministry of Health and the health authorities. And for those that aren't aware of kind of the lay of the land in BC, there are a variety of different health authorities that cover geographic regions, and those health authorities are kind of the main point of contact for these small water systems. We also found that turnover was a really big issue because the systems were so small. If someone kind of got too old to take care of the system, there might not have been somebody ready and willing to replace them. So lots of conversations around contingency planning, who will run the system, and then how can we help these individuals make decisions so that they're sustainable into the future. We also found that funding was an issue. Due to the small user base, there's less money to be pulled together to make any infrastructure updates or sustainability changes. And due to the nature of small water systems, there's minimal access to government funding or grants, which creates a little bit of a challenge. And then just overall, we found that climate change itself was affecting these small systems a little bit more than some of the larger systems that we may hear about. And as well with some of these conversations that we had with individuals, we asked a lot about, key topics or key issues that they might be struggling with or might need more support on. And as you can see from the pie chart on the screen, that it is a complex issue. No two small water systems really look the same. So when we think of building an effective community for these individuals, you really have to consider that there's over 4,000 across the province, and how do we build a space that is going to work for everyone? So kind of after those conversations, it was really when the community network started to be envisioned. We know it needed to be internet-based and mobile friendly, so that way it could kind of span all across the province. And we wanted to reduce as many barriers as possible. So it's a free platform. There's no real criteria for folks to join. It's open for anyone interested in small systems, whether you're in BC or not. A lot of the information that gets shared on the platform or the conversations had between members is really applicable kind of across the board, or anyone working and interested in small systems in general. And so there's a lot of different areas for peer-to-peer engagement, as we'll see when we go through a little bit of a walkthrough of the platform. But one of the main pieces that we spent a lot of time and consideration on was privacy levels. And that was really just due to those initial conversations that we had with potential members and understanding that they wanted to be able to engage in an online space that felt safe for them. And so by spending a lot of time working on privacy settings and understanding how that might look like on an online space, we're really able to kind of build a community that people feel safe and comfortable learning from each other and sharing their experiences in a way that's comfortable to them. And so my one piece that I will say in terms of any community platform, whether that be in the drinking water space or outside of that, is that it's not going to happen overnight. As you can see here with the project plan, lots of information gathering and conversations happened early on in 2021. And then there was continued development. We established an advisory committee so that we could hear from other organizations in the space, hear from the health authorities, and hear from folks that worked with small water systems, how we could build the best community that's going to suit the needs of everyone. And then taking a step forward, actually working with developers to build a platform that's going to fit these needs. And then finding soft launch users or users in your community that would be willing to test platforms such as these. And then from there, the community network was launched in March of 2022 and has been kind of running continually since then with continual upgrades and feedback process from our members. And so I will do a little bit of a walkthrough of the community network just to give you an idea of what the platform itself looks like, but also just to kind of spark some ideas if you're thinking about creating an online community or even just interested in community building work, thinking about some of the areas that might be helpful for you. So when you go to smallwaternetwork.org, this is what the landing page looks like. Along the top menus, you'll find a lot of information kind of about the project, as well as how to join the network and to become a member. Once you've logged in, you land on what we call the dashboard. So this is kind of your first step into the community. You'll find your profile information along the left-hand side. Through the middle, it's the new in the community. So this area kind of pulls together any information that was posted by members or resources or activities from across the platform. And then on the left-hand side, on the right-hand side, you'll see another little box that can kind of provide short announcements and tips and things like that. And so the dashboard itself really has a lot of great components. You can check your messages. You can see how others view you. And you'll see on the left-hand side there, beneath my name, there is an alias. So that kind of ties in with those privacy settings and understanding what your community wants to be able to engage comfortably. But we've set up the community network in a way that you can participate fully with your name and your picture and sharing all your information, but you can also choose to have an alias and participate on more of an anonymous basis. Moving along the menu on the top, the profile section, you'll also find a lot of great information and opportunities within there. You're able to check your messages, edit your profile, view your profile, and the connections page as well. And connections is kind of how you join other organizations and show what affiliations you might have. So this is what the connections page looks like. And the community network was set up in a way so that you join initially as an individual. But if you are a small water system owner, or let's say you volunteer at an organization, or you're affiliated with another organization, you can connect your personal profile to any of those organizations. And so folks have the ability to search or connect to organizations that are already on the community network. But if your organization isn't on the community network, then there's the option to create it. And so this is a really valuable step, and something to consider in terms of community building itself is, why might someone want to connect to an organization? And so in this case, if you are part of a small water system, it's almost acts as an extra vetting step to be able to access some of our private areas of the platform. And so moving along, next in the community network, we have a directory area. There's both a member directory and an organization directory. And this is something that we've received a lot of feedback from as being a pretty valuable space, especially on a community platform, as it allows members to really learn about who else are they engaging with. And with the search tabs in both of the member directory and the organizations directory, it really provides a way for folks to search members by, maybe interests, information in their profile, a certain role. So if you're looking to connect with somebody maybe that has the same job as you as an operator, you could search for operators and potentially find someone that way and then have a conversation with them. As well, on the directory, you have the ability to message folks and favorite them and view their details. So if you're looking at someone's details, you'll get a little bit of a pop-up, and this details kind of ties back into all of the privacy that was thought of initially with the development of this community platform. So as you can see there, I've chosen to share quite a lot of information about myself, but individuals are able to really share whatever they find appropriate. And so from an organization's perspective, your profile is really a great spot for sharing about the work you do, maybe sharing links to your social media or links to your website and any of the resources that you might have. And another piece of feedback that we taken from the community is just the ability to save and favorite contacts in both of the directories. So everyone has a personal My Favorites page where they're able to favorite other members or organizations and then write a short note about why they favorited that person. So this could be really valuable. For example, if you took a course or maybe you met someone through a webinar and you want to follow up with them. So you could write a little note that you're interested in following up with this person, and that way you've remembered their contact. The next area of the community network is our lounges. And we currently have 2 lounges on the network. One is hosted by ourselves, and that's the Owner's Lounge. And the other is Water Movement's collaboration zone for Indigenous operators. And this is a partnership that we have with another organization based on the work that they are already doing. And especially in community building spaces, it really doesn't make sense to redo work that other folks are doing. If there are organizations out there that are providing great services or have great information or have a technical discussions area like Water Movement, it's better to highlight and elevate and work with these other organizations rather than trying to do everything, in a silo. So if you were to click into that collaboration zone, you would be jumped over to Water Movement's page. And I would say The partnerships and collaboration opportunities between other organizations is really one of the strengths of the community network and community building work in and of itself. So this screenshot here that you'll see is just what the owner's lounge looks like. We have scrubbed a little bit of information off there just to respect folks' privacy. But you can see there is a little bit of details about what the owner's lounge is, some announcements specific to small water systems, and the big green button that you see on the right is how folks would jump into the technical discussions in the owner's lounge. And so there's a variety of different topics that folks have been talking about, and everyone also has the ability to input their own topics as well. And so to really provide an ease of engagement for folks, what we've done is include a what are people talking about box. So this pulls most recent conversations and displays them on this front page here so that if someone's entering the owner's lounge, they're able to jump right into the conversation that others are having. And so beyond the lounges, the community network has kind of two main areas where all of our content and education and experience sharing is really happening. The first is the knowledge zone, and then we have the community news. So the knowledge zone is divided into three distinct areas. The first we have is the resources page. And you can see we've got about 85 resources currently on the network. These were things that we did a little bit of searching ourselves initially, but that partnership and collaboration between other organizations that work in the space was really central to building out the resources area. And you'll also find some of Watershed's resources on this page if you do a little bit of searching. As well as a variety of other organizations that we work with. And the resources page also has a most popular tab that we change pretty seasonally just to kind of direct folks to certain resources if they're relevant to a certain time of year. Next in the knowledge zone, we have our articles area. And articles can be written by small water systems or by supporter members as well as staff. So there's a variety of different knowledge sharing opportunities. But this really, members themselves could have the opportunity to share their experiences and share what they've learned. So as you can see, the article in the middle there, Will a Coanda Screen Solve Your Turbidity Issues, was a very small systems experience. You can see the photo is of their intake system, and they've discussed a little bit about some of the challenges they're having, some of the potential solutions they've tried, and then what they're doing currently. We also get a lot of information from our supporters and the stuff that they are willing to share. So you can see as a separate example, there is a water restrictions reminder sticker, and that was provided as a template from one of our supporters that folks were able to use if they need that. And the third area of the knowledge zone is the technical discussions. And so this really looks similar to the owner's lounge in the page layout, but the difference here is that there is no restriction on who can participate. So small water systems and supporter members could both participate freely on these technical discussions. And we've also pulled the what are people talking about just to provide that ease of access for the community. And then just jumping into kind of the last big content area of the community network, we have the community news area, and it is also divided into three different pages. And so first we have upcoming events, which is pretty self-explanatory, sharing either on online or in-person events, webinars, education, training, even meetups or things like that. The next page that we have is the opportunities page. And so essentially, opportunities can be anything that isn't an upcoming event. So it might be an opportunity for volunteering, for participating in a focus group, maybe participating in a research request, or providing ideas about topics, really anything. We are open to help the community, spread the word about the things that they're doing and find others that are interested in participating. And then we also have a wanted offering page, which acts kind of like a classified ads area. So there are a couple pieces of equipment on the wanted offering page now, but for just to, again, to protect some privacy, we've just shown the page pretty plain here, but it allows members to find or share equipment that they might be looking for, or if someone's operator's on vacation, maybe you're looking for someone to cover for you. But really, we just tried to think and use the feedback and conversations that we had with members before the community network was created to make sure that there were enough spaces on the network that members were able to post information. And so all of the different content areas in the community news can be submitted by anyone on the network, as well as the areas in the knowledge zone. And if members were interested in posting information, they could use the submit a post button on any of those previous pages that I was showing. And that would essentially pull up this convenient form. And that way folks can fill out as much information as they want, add some photos, add their contact details, and then we can post it on the network. And so I think when thinking about community spaces and ensuring that it's available for everyone, having easy mechanisms for members to be able to post information on their own is a really great place to start. So then that way, everybody's actively contributing to the network, and it's not just me posting on the site for others to read, but it's really that reciprocal process of, individuals having stuff they want to share and sharing it. And then if I'm aware of stuff, I can also share it back for them. And so beyond some of the main pages that we have in the community network, there are a few things that you want to consider when creating community spaces. So I think kind of one of the biggest pieces and likely a good starting point is thinking around your community code of conduct. And you want to make sure that this is something that's available in multiple locations across the platform. And depending on the type of community that you're trying to build or what your goals are, the code of conduct will look a little bit different. But you really want to make sure that you spent some time thinking about what needs to be included in the code of conduct and how that's going to help move your community forward. And so in our instance, we have this available on a few different pages across the network, as well as when folks create their profile at the beginning, they've got to read and accept that, similar to other websites that people are familiar with. And then another piece about the code of conduct is just to make sure that it's reviewed by the appropriate parties prior to use. So that might be your advisory committee, or that may even be like some sort of legal review. And in thinking about who's participating on your community or within your community, you want to think a little bit about the demographics of the individuals and how that is going to lend to their participation. And so in our example, when we talked to a lot of the small water systems, we found that these individuals were generally older and not as tech savvy. And so these are considerations that you want to take in when thinking about some of the support that's going to be needed, especially in an online space. And so when thinking about, your frequently asked questions, making sure that you have enough information there that is going to answer what you think common questions are. And then another good practice is that if you're, receiving emails or having conversations with folks and they are asking questions, just note those down. And then that's something that you can include in an updated FAQ at some point. Another practice that we took for some of our help on the platform is rather than creating written documents, all of our help is in the form of videos. And so this way you can kind of walk people through exactly what they might need to do and help them in a way that might be a little bit easier than just reading some documents. And then finally, another really important consideration when thinking about the safety of community spaces and community building in general is having a mechanism for dealing with conflict. So as you would have seen through the screenshots in the walkthrough that we just did, there was a red report abuse button available on every single page across the community network. And that way, it provides a really easy mechanism for folks to report abuse or maybe misuse of the system if they're experiencing that or if they notice that. And taking a little bit of a step back, when you do have mechanisms for dealing with conflict, you really need to think about what processes are going to be used. So in our example, all of the mechanisms that we have for dealing with conflict is outlined in the community code of conduct so that folks know that there's an appropriate way to engage with each other in the community space. And that way you can really create a welcoming community that people are going to feel comfortable to share their experiences, but also ask questions and participate in a way that's going to be conducive to everyone that's there. And so I'll just now talk a little bit about some of the lessons that we've learned through community building on the platform itself. And the first lesson, although it might seem quite simple and straightforward, it really is an important one. And that is on working together. So as I mentioned near the beginning of the talk today, small water systems have a lot of challenges around capacity and around time. And so we wanted to ensure that the community space that we built was really a place to support the challenges that were experienced by this group of small systems owners. And we knew that to be able to do this, it takes more capacity than one person. And so that is why, collaboration and relationship building between supporters and other nonprofit organizations really allows the community to go beyond what the BCWWA itself could provide. And that way you're also strengthening the network between organizations that are doing similar work so that you can really kind of build fruitful organizations and networks going forward. And a lot of the times we find that organizations kind of like to stick in singularity and work on their projects on their own, but it can really be strengthened and increase the capacity if you're willing to partner or even willing to just have conversations with others and share what you've learned, share the work that others are doing. And ultimately, that a lot of the supporters or folks working in the space, we all have similar goals, and we can realize and achieve these goals with more success and more sustainability by working together and pooling our resources. And so the second lesson that we've learned through the community network is on active engagement. And this is something particularly important if you're working in an online platform. Of course, online platforms are going to bring a little bit more challenges than something in person, but important to keep in mind kind of going forward. And especially for the community network project itself, to be able to accommodate for the geography of systems across the province, having easy to access information and easy participation was really what was important. And so through some of those initial conversations that we had with individuals, we found that people were really eager to talk to their peers, but they hadn't had the space to do that before, or the knowledge of how to even find peers to begin with, given some of the rural and remote locations that small systems were located in. And to build on this, we know that if there is participation being encouraged on one side, there's going to be a reciprocal effect. People will find the value in what you're sharing, and then they'll be more willing to share their own knowledge or experiences going forward. So really having the ability to kind of provide the space for them to do that. And then, really just understanding that folks who find your community might not necessarily have the same needs as the initial conversations that you had with focus groups, but that the community is going to grow and different members are going to join with different levels of experience. So you really have to consider the importance of meeting members where they're at and then guiding them forward. And thinking through, especially on an online space, what mechanisms do you have to facilitate this participation? And how can you be open and willing to receive feedback and then take that feedback and make actual changes? So one of the examples that I can give from the community network is that initially with the online platform, we had a lot of questions about how to navigate and some of the different areas. And so we held a number of sessions just talking about what was available on there, how to navigate. And then we ended up using email, which was a method that a lot of individuals told us that they were more familiar with, to help them learn some tips and tricks before actively engaging on the platform itself. And the third lesson that we've learned over the past little while on the community network is using education as a tool. And this lesson will be a little bit different for everyone, just depending on the goals that you might have or the type of community that you're trying to build. But if you can think back to the goals of the community network, education and knowledge and experience sharing were really at the forefront of what we were trying to do. And before the community network was really created, education was central to small water systems projects at the BCWWA. And so as we saw through the walkthrough, there are a variety of different places with a variety of different types of information available on the network. And I think on online spaces, especially, that's a really valuable component to have, just due to the fact that not everyone is going to feel the same way about reading documents, not everyone's going to feel the same way about watching videos. People like their information in different formats, and community spaces in an online way can really facilitate that. And so we offer two live virtual education workshops that run for 2 days. And that was a really great way for folks to, meet others face to face in a virtual format, and have conversations, and then take the network that they met at those workshops and then continue the conversation later on. Um, Beyond that, we have our virtual self-paced course, which acts as a little bit of a primer. But education in different formats can be helpful in a variety of ways. And what's really important as well about some of these education opportunities is that it lends to increased knowledge, better informed questions, better discussion in some of the different areas of the community network, and then ultimately improved outcomes for everyone. And then finally, the last big lesson and key takeaway is just around creating space. And we heard time and time again that our members were looking to talk to each other. And so that is truly at the heart of the community network, is being able to find peers, connect with peers, have discussions online, have discussions in a virtual format, and have conversations kind of over email, or a little bit of time delay, but really understanding that creating the space for community connections looks different, and you're going to be able to create better space for people if you have a variety of mechanisms for these conversations to happen. And so, we continue to facilitate these conversations through the mechanisms on the community network. But again, one of the biggest pieces around community building is just understanding that things change. And if going forward we find a better way to do something, then we will take that feedback and update and go ahead with that. And so just lastly, on community building in general, it's really important to think back to the context that you're working with. What opportunities are already out there? Are there other organizations doing similar work? How can you work with them and not against them? How can you kind of leverage the work that you're both doing to catapult everyone forward? You really want to understand the demographic of the community that you're working with. So have conversations with these folks, do a lot of research. Are there community spaces that have already been created that you want to try to build on? Are you starting a community from scratch, but maybe there's been a different platform that folks are using? Or, really thinking about those users and what they need, and if online is going to be a good avenue forward, or in person, and thinking about community building in a variety of ways. And then beyond that, really looking to your subject matter experts. So there are likely folks out there that have experience in doing the work that you want to do. And so how can you kind of get them on board, or at least have conversations with these people to understand what works, what doesn't, what experience do they have to share with you about community building itself. And then lastly, try something. And if it doesn't work, try again. Community building is not one size fits all. As I've learned along the way, there are tons of things that you might think are great at the beginning. But as you go through, as you have conversations with your members or others in the community, you're going to want to reevaluate, take that feedback, and then try something different. And ultimately, you would be doing a disservice to your community by trying to stick to what you had done at the beginning. You want to make sure that an active, sustainable community is something that has the ability to grow and change and take on a new path if that's what it needs. So thank you. That concludes my presentation, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thanks so much, Claire. I do want to point out that it is 3, so I just want to make sure that you're okay to take a couple extra minutes to go through the questions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Amazing. Okay, so before we go into the questions, Nicole is just going to pop into the chat a short evaluation survey. So if people can take a moment to click through that and then answer it after the call, it just helps Claire and I know what you thought of today's presentation, and also for the freshwater stewardship community in general, as we look to plan our 2024 webinar series. You can let us know if there are any topics or speakers or organizations that you would really like to be featured. So you can do all of that in that link. And we have a couple of questions that have been submitted. So the first one, Claire, it was near the beginning of the presentation. Someone was asking if suppliers need to be approved by one or more organizations, or if they can just list themselves.
Yeah, so through that organization joining process, firstly, when you join as a member, there's no real vetting. Anyone can join as a member, but then through that organization process, that's when that additional step happens. So someone fills out the form, all of the information about their organization, whether that be a supplier or a small water system, and then someone like myself takes a quick review over the information that gets submitted, and then it gets approved. So we do have that little bit of an approval process just to make sure that there aren't any fake organizations being added to the community network, but it's just a simple step. Yeah.
Great. We have someone who is interested in finding out more because they live on the shore of an inland waterway. So do you have strategies that you found work better for systems that are just a couple of people versus larger, if they're on a marine system, closer to a marine system versus freshwater? Like, or have you found that all the principles are pretty universal?
I would say a lot of the information that we include on the community network, we try to have available to as many different types of systems as possible. When I was talking a little bit at the beginning about what a small water system looks like itself, no real system will look like the next. So that is one of the challenges as well with providing education and resources, is that some of the resources might pertain to a certain system, but others may not. So that is kind of what we've found on the community network, is that we try to include as much information as possible for as many different types of systems. And then that's also why we have areas for members themselves to submit and share articles or share resources, because if there's things that others have found that we might have not included, then that way we can add that onto the network as well. But I would really encourage, if you're interested in learning more, just go to the community network itself, have a poke around, see if there's information on there. Use the variety of different search tools across the network. But if there's any more specific questions, you can always email myself. My contact's up on the screen there, and I would be happy to have a more in-depth conversation.
Fantastic. And I think this next question will maybe just get you to extend the answer you just gave. So someone is curious about links to source water protection related to land use planning in BC. Do you have any spots you can point them to, either within the network or just other places that they could go?
Yeah, we do actually have a few source water protection resources. If you look within the resource page on the Knowledge Zone, So if you use the search tab, I would recommend typing in, source water or typing in protection. Either of those words should pull up a few of those resources. And within the next couple weeks, we're also doing a little bit of an information campaign on the community network. So that's where we just kind of publish a lot of new articles, new resources pertaining to a certain topic. And so our upcoming info campaign will kind of be a deep dive into small water systems challenges, and source water protection is one of the challenges that we're going to talk about. So there will be a few more resources, I would say, next week or the week after added to the network as well.
Thank you. What would you say has been the biggest challenge with the community, and how have you worked through that?
Yeah. I would say one of the biggest challenges was taking that initial feedback that we received from folks in person and trying to translate that into an online space. And really, online spaces in general, as you know, with a lot of the social media out there, there's a lot of great platforms created, but rather than using platforms that were already out there, we created our own. So it was really understanding how can we create this platform without duplicating things that are already out there, but then using what we know from, the needs of the small water systems themselves and translating that onto the online space in a way that was really going to facilitate that active engagement and that peer-to-peer knowledge translation and experience sharing.
The next question has to do about the community. So I don't know how long you've been working with the community, but for the time that you have been involved, if you could redo it, is there anything that you would do differently based on what you know now and having gone through your time with it?
Yeah. No, that's a great question. So I started working when we were in the kind of web development phase. So I wasn't involved in some of the early on focus group conversations. But I think based on what I've learned from those conversations and based on my experience now, I think going forward, what I would have done differently was really trying to get an even distribution of across the province of that feedback. And so what we find now is that a lot of our members are focused in certain areas. So we have a lot of members from the island, a lot from the interior, but not a lot from the northern areas of the province. And so there are different challenges based on those different geographic regions. And due to the initial feedback, we didn't really get kind of even understanding of what that looks like. So I think kind of understanding a little bit more about the geographic spread and then how that translates into, the type of people that are joining, the type of information that gets shared, kind of parsing that information out a little bit better for the actual landscape.
All right. And our last question here is if you have any suggestions on outreach to new people and groups or evaluating the areas of improvement within your community.
I'll speak just kind of generally, but what I like to do is just general searches for organizations who are related to some of the topic areas that we work with. So, anytime when I get questions from folks about certain topic areas that I'm not familiar with, I'll go out and do a general search to see if there are others providing education or opportunities in those spaces. But I think another really big piece is when you're beginning community work, you do the initial kind of lay of the land stakeholder map. But I think it's really valuable to not hold that as kind of the be all end all. You're going to have new stakeholders coming in and out kind of as the time goes on. So I would even set up some sort of maybe regular, stakeholder mapping or exploratory time to be able to find others that will fit in the space of what your community is going to look like.
Awesome. Well, I think we got through all the ones that I can see in the chat. So thank you, Claire, for staying a few extra minutes and answering those questions, and for a wonderful presentation as well. For everyone that tuned in today, we'll be sending the recording and that information handout early next week. So you can share that widely with anyone you think might be interested in what Claire's covered today. And then we will also be sending out information for our upcoming webinars. So you can keep finding more ways to take action in your community. And so we're just really thankful to Claire for being part of our mini series this fall, and wish you all the best for the rest of your day.
Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for joining.